A lot of people my age like to bark at how the way school buses are built today. But there are some places, but there are some avenues and reason why some of the changes have been good, but have been for the better. In the 50s, and not all of the buses back in the 50s and 60s were built poorly. I think there's some moves that they did back then that were better than what we see on buses today. We only found some mistakes that were some good and bad when it came to school bus building in the days when I was a kid. Even though right now I'm 60, so most of the buses were built definitely, of course, they were definitely much different than what we see today. The Special District had a ton of Carpenter school buses. They were almost turned out to be they were almost a repeat customer of Carpenter School Bus Corporation. And 90% of the buses they bought were Carpenters, even though the first buses they bought were Waynes rather than Carpenter. But when I went to summer school in 1968, I went on a field trip to the Ford plant. And in those days, just about a lot of your major corporations would offer tours of their plants to show you what they do. Ford had a plant up in Hazelwood, just west of the airport. And the bus that my summer camp rented was a Superior International with an 8-speed compound transmission. Of course, meaning with the 4 possible speeds. You only, on the main backs, you only had 3 that were truly usable. And of course, with the high and low, those are really totally more like a total of 6 speeds. They're totally usable instead of 8. But what I had, of course, they had a stepwell that I had trouble with. So it could be that maybe I probably got some misalignment in my feet, in my right foot. See, the bus they had a 4-step staircase, 4 steps counting the floor. It was a bus built in the latter part of the 1950s. And check out the stepwell the bus had. The bottom step, of course, was sort of curved. And then the middle step had a kind of a bent, leaned up almost towards the inside. So I was climbing up though. My feet almost didn't want to get up the steps, and I had to grab onto something to keep myself from falling back. So later on, Superior, I think later on, discontinued that stepwell. But then also they kept making what's called the inward-outward door. Now here's a look of the doors that were on the buses back in the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. Here is the inward-outward door. The front leaf opens out and the rear leaf opens in. The plus side to that is when you open the door, for the cleaning guys to get on to clean the top window pane on the door, it makes it easier for them to get to it, because then you can just step on the bottom step and really wipe it without the need of a ladder. And of course, when you closed the door, you had a good seal from top to bottom. That was the good part. And of course, Superior had a jackknife door, which of course opened to the back. But the reason why later on that was discontinued, because sometimes if there's somebody riding up there in the front behind the door, and somehow by accident the bus driver somehow just threw the door open, that rear leaf coming in would somehow, that rear leaf would sometimes bang against the step-well guard, and he had somebody riding up there, and he had their hands up there, could almost have their fingers being smashed or something by the leaf coming in. And also, when you were closed, you only had a good vertical seal, though, that kept all the weather out. But down at the base of the step-well, there was a little bit of a draft coming underneath the leaf that swung in. Here is what is the jackknife door. Of course, Superior had it trialed a version of where when the doors would open inside the bus, they would fold towards the back. But then, of course, for the safety of people riding up in the first seat behind the door, that they just had all just fold forward towards the windshield. But now the reason why that door was almost discontinued, though, is because of the same thing. The reason why the inward-outward door, because there's a draft coming in from right at the bottom step. If you're going down the highway and the temperature is more like about 30 degrees outside. Thomas school buses almost hardly ever took a look at installing jackknife doors or inward-outward doors on their buses. Theirs was what Carpenter would call the panic-free, which is an outward panic-free. So when you open the door, both leaves will swing to the outside. It's on the step, though. It's easy to make the steps. You didn't have to worry about making any cuts in it or something like that, though, and then you can almost push have the middle step almost a little bit bigger. And what's so neat about it, and what's even more of a safer option, though, is like you see on today's buses. It's like if there would have been a fire in today's, the doors on today's buses are usually operated by air. The bus driver could reach up and flip a latch, and you could just push on the door and it opens, and it makes it easier for front seat passengers to exit the bus in case there's trouble and they needed to get out. Same with the inward-outward or the jackknife, you had the door coming in towards you, almost cutting off, slowing down your exit, and that just the outward panic-free. It just there was one hurdle that was clear. The only downside to that door is that I think on earlier buses that they almost had a pretty lousy seal, and I think Ward was the only bus builder I think that found a way to how to really make a good seal on them. on a panic-free door. I think Ward was the only one that did that, and I'm not sure how the other ones found a way how to do it. I think they just had to make stronger seals. But what is, you had to making sure that when you get ready to close, that the rear leaf had to start first before the front leaves, so that way you get a good seal. Almost. And the neat thing I do like about Panic Free, you also get a good seal, the full width down at the bottom and also up at the top. And if you have the door functioning properly and in order, then you get a good seal, and almost no cold air can seep inside the bus when it's 20 degrees out there, when you got a wind chill of nearly zero. It keeps the bus passengers safe. Climate-wise, and that way when they arrive at school, they're still all healthy and no health issues on the bus going to school. If we look back, I like the inward-outward because you got a good seal though, but I think the school bus companies has found a way I can make an outward panic-free, just the same good seal vertically as it would be horizontally. Now all the buses that Espresso had, almost all of their buses came with a panic-free door, with the exception on the wards. I think the first set of wards and the wings had the first set of wings they had came with jackknife doors. They were basically outward opening, panic free. Now we see why there is a plus side to the way how most school buses are built.